Okay.
If I find my way home, yeah. Wouldn't it be crazy? Oh, don't you still amaze me? Wouldn't it be crazy? Oh, don't you still amaze me? Wouldn't it be crazy? Oh, don't you still amaze me? Wouldn't it be crazy? Oh, don't you still amaze me? If I find my way home, yeah. If I find my way home, yeah. Wouldn't it be crazy? Oh, don't you still amaze me? Wouldn't it be crazy? Oh, don't you still amaze me? Wouldn't it be crazy? Oh, don't you still amaze me? Wouldn't it be crazy? Oh, don't you still amaze me? If I find my way home, yeah.
This is the movie for those who
something funky. All right, we're here. We're awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Keith. And with me is
It's
Mark.
me.
Yep, Mark D'Antonio.
I know. Jello, I got something for you. That's 3. 4.
There you
5.
go. Now you know that Mark's watching the chat, Jello.
That's right. And just think. I mean, that is really mean, Jello, considering I have a paralyzed vocal cord, and that's why this happens. Boy, oh boy. The fact that I can talk at all is next to a miracle.
And without going into too much detail, you want to explain how that vocal cord accident happened?
Yeah, well, actually, I had a couple years ago I had surgery. And Jello, by the way, I'm not worried. I know you're kidding around, and so am I. But a couple years ago I had surgery because I had infected valves in my heart. And then when I had after the surgery, or actually during the surgery, a clot from the damage inside the heart got loose, went to the brain, and exploded into a million pieces and gave me a minimum of 6 full strokes. I'm a perfectly normal person before that. So then I ended up having to learn how to walk again, learn how to talk. My sight was gone. I actually woke up as a full quadriplegic. It was just, amazing to hear people talking about me, saying, "Oh, he's going to be a quadriplegic and blind." And I'm sitting there saying, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." I'm trying to move, and I couldn't move. Nobody ever said a word. Actually, you know what? The weird thing is, maybe it's just because I rise to the occasion for challenges or something. I don't know. I was never really scared. It was weird. Maybe there was, partially the drugs to help me relax or whatever. But I was in a coma for a week after the surgery because I couldn't wake up. And in that coma, I was actually wide awake. And I could hear them talking, and I counted the passage of days. I heard them say, "Okay, after 5 days, we'll try to wake him up." So I counted 5 days. And 5 days came and went, and nobody woke me up. So it was like a weird thing. But it's because I miscounted the shifts. My brain
and
actually went to
not to mention,
sleep.
like, what you do for a living. I mean, you do a lot of talking.
But yeah, I do talks all over the country, and starting next year, I'm going to be going all over the world. I got a talk in Norway. I got to do next
so
August.
it's not really a good combination to lose your vocal cords and then
yeah, right.
when you actually talk for a living. So,
That's
but kudos to you for keeping on.
Hey, that's what I can do, At least, to now, there's no outward sign that I had a stroke or several strokes because I basically, like a pit bull, I just had to get back every single muscle that was misbehaving, and those that weren't back yet, I started to, stress to the point of failure.
Is it kind of like riding a bike? You just get used to it again, and it kind of all just comes back naturally.
Well, for your brain, I think within reason that's possible. For me, I don't think I had a permanent disability. I've looked at some people, and I felt these guys have spinal cord, severing of the spinal cord and this nerve sheath. It's like there's no coming back from that. Right. I just wish that I could have helped them, but I can't help them. But I look at them. I'm trying to go down the hall at the rehab place. Once I was well beyond hospital and into the rehab. I was 2 weeks in the rehab, and I've got a walker, and I'm struggling to go down this hall. It's maybe 25 feet long. And this kid in a wheelchair was next to me, who the wheelchair had to actually breathe for him because he was completely paralyzed. And in the middle of a breath, he said, "Hey, keep up the good work." It's like, what? And I looked at him. I gave him a hug. That was such a cool comment.
Which is why we need, I don't mean to get political here, but which is why we need all the funds we can going into research.
Absolutely. And stem cell research is a brilliant place to go.
Yes, and that is going forward in leaps and bounds too. I was reading a couple things about stem cell stuff. It's getting absolutely into futuristic that we thought we wouldn't even see in our lifetime. It's jumping by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, it is. Paul's back outside.
No, he's actually, see what he did is he
he's
he hooks
Wi-Fi
it up,
connected.
so he can control it from the inside. So yeah, guys, we're on the wide field for a little bit, so Paul can go in and warm up. He's been out there. He had 4 scopes out there at one point. 3 of them were giant. He was maneuvering them around. I finally got lost where I just stopped putting a scope on there because I didn't know which one he was on. But
Wow.
which brings up, the question I wanted to ask you, because we have a couple people in the chat. They keep asking about the 12-inch scope, the Meade, the LX90,
Yeah.
and they asked when we were going to bring it out. And the thing with that is, as everybody knows with telescopes, the bigger, the more light you're going to collect. But
Right, light
obviously,
bucket.
your resolution's going to be better and whatnot. But when it comes to 12, like 11 is really pushing. The 10 is by far the perfect look for what we do for the moon. When you go to a 12, you want to be sure that, number one, the air is darn near perfect. All right.
Yep.
Because if not, you're going to be collecting even more of that, and it's just going to look wavy, and it's actually not going to look as good as what the 10 does next to it. And another thing that Paul's working on is collimating the scopes. Now, I had a couple people ask me earlier, but I'll let you explain it because you can do it so much better than I can. Tell people what actual collimating is.
Well, when you basically, in one sentence, it's aligning all the mirrors in a telescope that has mirrors in it, so that the images that are on the center of one mirror are on the center of another mirror, basically making sure that none of the images are off-center on any of the mirrors. Now, in reality, what happens is you have in a Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope like Paul has, and like I have in SkyTour Livestream, the light goes down the telescope tube and it bounces off the primary mirror. So that giant light bucket takes in this gigantic, swath of light. But the light hits that mirror at the bottom where the mirror is fairly steeply curved. And then it comes racing back to the top of the telescope again after it comes reflecting off that mirror. But there's a second mirror in the middle of everything, and in a Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, it's suspended on a piece of glass called a corrector plate, and that's a glass disc, optically clear glass disc, that has this second mirror mounted to the middle of it. And the light hits that, and then that reflects the light back down through the center of the mirror. And the reason it can do that is because the center of the mirror actually has a hole in it. Now you say, well, wait, why would you put a hole in the mirror? Well, the secondary mirror, that's what that one up at the top in the glass disc is. The secondary mirror at the top of the telescope actually blocks that part of the telescope anyway. So if there was mirror there, it couldn't get light hitting it. But you say, well, why do you put anything in the middle anyway? Well, Newtonian reflectors have something in the middle as well. And Schmidt-Cassegrains have something in the middle. In fact, almost every telescope has something in the middle, except the refractor, where the light goes down a series of lenses to actually get focused to your eyeball.
And which is what we are actually using right now.
I can't. Did you have it listed on the screen? Because I didn't see it.
No, well, it's a 70 millimeter.
There it is.
ED,
Okay,
yeah.
triplet ED. Right, and this the lens-based systems, refractors. Okay, those give the images of the moon and planets far better than reflectors, and that's basically hands down something you can say. It doesn't matter how big your reflector is, how much light gathering power it has, in other words, how big a light bucket it is. It doesn't matter. That just makes the image brighter. It doesn't make it sharper. Okay, what makes it sharper is good quality optics, and anytime you reflect anything off a mirror, then you get a strange effect, because you have trouble refocusing that light, because once you reflect it off a mirror, different wavelengths of light reflect it in different places. All right, so when blue light reflects off and gets focused on, say, the next mirror that it's hitting, the red light and the green light that are hitting that mirror as well aren't quite as focused as, say, the blue light, and vice versa, with the red.
But this can differ between scopes, correct, or manufacturers?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So Celestron's a good name. Meade is a good name.
That's what I was going to bring up to, because I know you're a Meade guy, and we're Celestron people, but I think that is the one, and I could be totally wrong about this, I'm just taking a guess, but from the looks of it, I think that is the one main difference between Celestron and Meade, is whoever manufactures, they outsource it to somewhere, but that primary mirror, or the primary, now my brain's not working again. That one.
Okay.
Not
I mean,
the actual
just
primary, not the collecting mirror.
the secondary.
Yeah, secondary mirror.
All right. So what are you trying to say? Because I still don't get what you're trying to say.
I don't even know at this point. What time is it? 10 o'clock.
Well, it's only 10 o'clock.
Oh, we're good.
Well, no. I mean, I think that what you want to consider is that both Meade and Celestron, they've always been in competition with each other. They both came up from nothing. Celestron, I think, has been around a little bit longer in the Schmidt-Cassegrain field. I know that's true because when I was a child, I bought a Celestron 5. And back then, the tubes were bright orange with black trim. Everybody wanted to have that orange tube, this orange Celestron. It was just such a awe-inspiring instrument. When you pulled that out of its case, it came in a hard shell case, like a steamer trunk case.
Back in the days before they added the blue.
Yeah, right. There was no such thing as a blue Celestron or a black, Celestron.
Yeah.
Everything was this orange, and it always looked like Halloween. Every time you took it out, it was like a pumpkin, and that was fine. I thought that was very cool. All right, now we're on the Celestron 9 1/4. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So the bottom line was that Celestron has always been good. I enjoyed everything, even including the smell of the foam when you would open the case and take the telescope out, because that just exuded quality. And the forks, the way the whole thing was put together, the clock drive, everything was precision. And I never thought I would see that. That's right, Kenneth. Kenneth says classic orange tube. That's correct. It was. And what happened was, when I finally decided I was going to sell the Celestron 5, I ended up buying a Meade. All right. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that I just had to have, and because it was an 8-inch, the one I was buying. And Jello, stop it. Okay. I don't worry. You're kidding. All right. Don't feel bad just because I had some medical thing. Whoop-de-doo. You were being funny. It was actually funny. So I thought that was hilarious. Don't worry about it. Sorry, I was just reading something in the chat, and Jello was trying to say something, like trying to apologize for something, and he didn't do it. It's nothing. So anyway, I cleared my throat. So when I bought the Meade 8-inch, it was like night and day. It was like, wow, 8-inch telescope was so much more light gathering power than the 5, right? And the quality of the image was pretty good. And then when I started doing the whole concept of the automated observatory with my friend John, John and I decided we were going to get a 10-inch Meade, and the difference there is night and day between the 8-inch Meade and the 10-inch. So I sold my 8-inch Meade, and we got the 10-inch Meade, and the 10-inch Meade was far and away more than we ever thought it would be, both in weight. It was very heavy. The thing was like... Is
that what you have now? You have a 10-inch Meade?
Yeah, the Skytour Livestream is a 10-inch Meade, and I made my own pier, and I got the wedge, the special wedge-shaped dealie, so that I could actually do equatorial alignment and do longer exposure.
Let me ask you, with you being a Meade guy, we always have a lot of questions from people asking what is a good beginner's telescope. Now, I try to keep it out of the realm of computerized or go-to. I do have one of those that I recommend to people, but I always suggest if you're just starting out, you gotta learn the knobs, the old school knob system. And it'll just help in the future when you do eventually move to a computerized mount or a go-to telescope.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend as a good Meade beginner telescope?
Well, see, that's the thing. Okay, Meade and Celestron have kind of followed similar paths. Mm-hmm. So there are some nice beginner telescopes you can get, and I know you're thinking about the knobs, and I have to agree. What he's talking about is there's these little knobs that you can hold on to, and as you move them slowly, they're called slow motion controls. And as you move them slowly, you can actually start moving the telescope. But the thing is, the reason why it's good to do that instead of having say a I don't know what I'm trying to say, like a computerized telescope, is because then it teaches you which direction the telescope moves when you move the slow motion controls. You might say, well, that's not a very big deal. Actually, it is, because some telescopes invert the image, some telescopes reverse the image, some telescopes reverse and invert the image. It depends how you're viewing it through the eyepiece.
Believe it or not, it also helps with alignment.
Well, that's also true, and you know, if you're just a beginner, then you're not so much an alignment guy. All you do is sort of point the telescope in the right direction, and off it goes. Okay, and then the slow motion controls will work the right way they're supposed to. Like there's in astronomy, we have latitude and longitude, just like with terrestrial mapping. Okay, now the longitude lines are called right ascension lines. All right, and the latitude lines are called declination. Different words, same thing. So when someone says, the only difference is a longitude line's own space, that is the right ascension, is not listed as just a degree number. Okay, it's actually not like minus 175. Okay, for something like that. Okay, it's given in hours, minutes, and seconds. And you'll say, well, wait, why is that? Well, because if you look at the sky, all right, 1 degree, all right, the Earth goes 360 degrees in 24 hours. Okay, it rotates on its axis 360 degrees in 24 hours. Now, if you consider that the right ascension and declination of the just the right ascension, just the longitude lines, basically, then you would have you could go through say 24 hours of time, all right, on the clock, basically, and that amounts to basically 15 degrees an hour and so forth. So if you have a telescope that's going and following the sky, what that means is you have the one axis of the telescope, that is the polar axis of the telescope, pointing to Polaris, the North Star, roughly. And then when you shift the telescope east and west, it's following this line of the lines of longitude at the same declination. Boy, that sounds confusing. I know. I wish I could do drawings here in this chat.
And I should also mention that some good scopes, like the higher quality beginner scopes, will have your numbers on dials to help you out, and that's one of the important parts of learning the initial guide into using your telescope is finding the numbers and knowing how it works, because that's going to help you so much when you go into the computerized world.
Right, and you don't have to spend $1 million on these, okay? Right. Because you can buy the Meade Star Navigator, which is like it's a 102 millimeter little telescope, okay, and it's basically a 4-inch, okay.
And we should also add that you don't need, especially if you plan on just moon gazing, you do not need a big telescope at all.
No, actually, smaller is better in some cases, because, like I said, and actually you don't need a reflector. You need, if you want to get a refractor that's smaller, right, that's also a good thing for moon gazing. Absolutely. For instance, Meade has one called the ETX80. Okay, now that means 80 millimeter diameter objective lens. The lens on the end is called the objective. All right, and this one is kind of a rich field telescope, meaning that it has a kind of a wide view when you look through it, which is nice. And you can always use a magnifier to boost the image size. You do that with something called a Barlow lens, which is the same thing as like I'm calling it a magnifier.
Yeah, and then they come in 2 times and 3 times and 4 times and 5 times, depending on what you want to see. Yep,
and then you actually can put in an eyepiece that will, coupled with that Barlow, will give you different power. So you can end up with 2 or 3 eyepieces and 1 Barlow that could give you about 7 or 8 different powers.
And very, very good looks at the moon.
Yes, absolutely. Now the ETX80, okay, is an 80 millimeter refractor. Okay. Now, on top of it, you can use it manually all you want. However, the nice thing about it is you can also use it with the computer built in. It's $299. Okay, so for just $300, you can actually get a telescope that will just follow the moon all night long, and will actually do the go-to stuff. All right, you can actually have it, do a reasonable go-to. So when you say, all right, I want to go see the Ring Nebula, then you can go to the Ring Nebula. But it is only 80 millimeters in diameter, so it's not going to be like a 10-inch telescope or a 12-inch. Okay, it's going to be 80 millimeters.
But with that said, which one do you recommend? For somebody that doesn't know anything about telescopes, they like the moon, and they say, I'm thinking about buying a telescope to start learning this stuff, and they said they want to go with Meade. Which one do you recommend to them?
I could recommend that refractor there, the one I said, the ETX80. They also have the Meade Navigator, something or other, 102. It's like 102 millimeter. Right. And that's a slightly, that'll give you slightly higher powers. It's also computerized. You're not going to find a telescope that shows up non-computerized. You really will always have something computerized. And the Star Navigator comes with, the hand control and a clock drive that follows the stars. And that is a 102 millimeter refractor. Okay, so that's nice. Now that's $370. Okay, so $299 for the 80, $370 for the other one. As a refractor, those are great. The trouble with reflectors, okay, is that reflectors will have a bit of a larger tube, unless you get one that's a very much smaller one. Okay, for instance, there's an 82 millimeter. It's a real small one. It's only, believe it or not, it's only $59, but it's an f3 refractor. I'm sorry, reflector. So it's basically kind of a glorified telephoto lens, except it has eyepieces and a finder scope, and it's got a very nice, it's 300 millimeter focal length. It's called, not the diameter. Okay, the diameter of it is just 82 millimeters. All right, but it's got some interesting stuff, and it actually, in this particular case, this one actually does not have a built-in drive system as the other ones do. I don't think. I think this one is just complete hand scope. Right. You got to move it, with the controls.
Which is what one of my recommendations are. If I had to recommend starter scopes, by far the one I would recommend most, and it's the old by hand turn crank, but the Celestron 114 would be one that I highly recommend.
The 114
they start off at I think they start off at like $139,
and they go to like 300, and they're
really good optics.
Yeah.
Really sturdy. Comes with a really, really high grade tripod. Everything on it is really well made.
Yep.
And if you wanted to skip to that, which I do not recommend, but if you wanted to go into the computerized world, then I would recommend the Celestron 130.
Well, the 114 comes as a computerized go-to telescope as well.
Correct, but that's not going to be for $139.
No, it's $299.
But that's what I'm saying. So
don't forget, you get what you pay for.
And the 130 SLT is definitely one I'd recommend if you're looking to get into computerized. Now, I think that's a good two-step process where you would get the 114, learn what you want to learn, and then actually upgrade to the 130, or I believe the next one up is like a 180. I'm not mistaken, maybe it's 160.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But that's a good two-step if you're looking, to take a year to get used to those. But those would be the ones I recommend to start.
Now, if you do want to get light buckets and you don't want to pay top dollar, then what you could do is get a Dobsonian. All right, you can get an 8-inch diameter Dobsonian for under $500. And maybe even less if you want to do that. Now, the other thing is a company that's called Orion, like Orion the Hunter, Orion, Orion Telescope. They actually have some very nice equipment, and I've bought from them for many years. Little incidental things. I did buy a refractor from them.
I had to admit, I've never used an Orion.
No, they make very nice stuff. They do. And so for a Sky Tour live stream, I actually bought a unit from Orion to actually create a Wi-Fi hotspot inside my telescope so that I could connect to it with my phone or an iPad, from quite a distance away. I could connect to it from inside the house, 100 feet from the telescope. So that's not bad. So Orion makes several packages as well. They have some nice reflectors. I want to just mention though what I mean when I say it's an f3 or an f4. Basically, the focal length of a telescope and the f number on a telescope means basically how fast it is. That is, what its light gathering capability is, and that counts everything from the coatings on the glass to help transmit light faster and easier to what you're using for eyepieces and so forth. And the mirrors themselves that are on reflecting telescopes typically have to have special coatings so that the light that hits it will reflect off. It's nearly 100%. You don't want any loss in the system, especially with a telescope that's going to reflect light multiple times, like a Newtonian reflector, where light goes down the tube, comes up to a second mirror, and then shoots out of a little eyepiece, that's called a draw tube at the top where you put your eye, okay? And the Schmidt-Cassegrain is one where it goes down the tube, goes back to a mirror, goes back down through the tube, through a hole in the mirror to your eye. So it goes an extra bounce. The benefit of that is Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes, otherwise known as SCTs, are much shorter in length. And you can actually get a telescope like that, one of these telescopes that has this folded optical path like this, can still deliver just phenomenal results. I mean, obviously, I put them in my observatory, so I think that's impressive. So, but go to Orion telescope as well, all right? And Orion will show you many different possibilities right there, And there's a lot of good starter scopes. They're like I said, for under $500, you can get an 8-inch Dobsonian telescope. You can move right into an 8-inch, and that, by the way, is also computer controlled. Just so you know, the Dobs now, these Dobsonian mounts never used to be computer controlled because they just seem too cumbersome. Right. But Orion has managed to put their go-to technology into Dobsonians as well, and it's actually fairly good. Bill New York Skywatcher, in fact, his telescope, he has an 8-inch Dobsonian, and he has it's a go-to capable scope,
And
so that
a
means
beast.
It is a beast, which is why I told him don't bring it outside all the time. Just put it out there and leave a cover on it. Yeah. And just put the little moisture thing in there that I told him about. Yeah. It's called Evadry. So I mean, there's a lot, and you can get a Ritchie Chrétien astrograph if you want. Now that's a 10-inch telescope. It comes in a variety of sizes, and that's only $2,500. But these are high-end professional telescopes, so you can in fact go all the way up. And if you want to spend $1,500, then you can get, let's see, you could get a is this a 12? It's a truss telescope. I think that one's a 12. Yeah, the 12-inch telescope is a truss for $1,500. Mm-hmm. Now, not bad. What's a truss? Well, it basically means it doesn't have a solid cylindrical tube. Only at the bottom where the mirror is located, and the stuff at the top is actually metal truss assemblies that are very, very sturdy and stable. Truss telescopes were very popular because the time it takes for a telescope to get used to the cold and acclimate is cut way the heck down when you have a truss and an open assembly like this.
It kind of reminds me of that one Celestron's making. They call it a backpack telescope, and it literally comes in something that almost looks like a suitcase, and you would bring it out, and you can either tabletop it, like say out if you're camping or something, or you can mount it to a tripod. And what it does is when you bring it out, it actually extends, so you get your focal length. You take it out because it's really compact, but you actually, it kind of pulls the tube apart, and the tube is held by 4 bars, and it extends out to where your length needs to be. And I think that one starts at like $219 or something like that, which is pretty good for what it does.
Yeah. Now the other thing you have to worry about with telescopes is another thing, is that they're made of metal generally, and the glass is how the mirror is made. But glass and metal, contract in the cold, and they contract at a little bit different rates. So the makers of the telescopes have to build into the tube and build into the assembly a mechanism by which, when the telescope begins to contract as it's getting, acclimating to the cold, that all the contraction happens along one direction and not along multiple axes. Okay, I was going to say axes. Talking about axes, because if they did it across multiple axes, then when you look through your telescope, at 7 p.m. and then at 7:45 when you go to do another look, the stars might be really strange looking, or they might have little tails or something. So clearly you can't have a telescope go out of collimation when it gets colder and warmer. Yeah. And that collimation, as I said, is making sure the mirrors are all lined up with each other so that the images are perfectly round.
And you can always do the when it comes to focus and stuff like that, you can always do the pinpoint star trick. Make sure your stars are pinpoints.
Yeah, that's true, but you can't get a pinpoint if the telescope's not collimated.
Right.
If the telescope's not collimated, then what that means is that you've got one mirror that's got a slight twist to it or whatever.
A slight funk.
Yes, so that the star image that is reflecting off of it is not quite perfect, and it's going to be maybe it'll have a little tail on it. You don't get rid of that.
Yep. And I would say about in all cases...
well, unless you collimate. You get rid of it.
In cheaper telescopes, now I'm saying cheaper, usually in the $300 less things, you're going to see the color bands on brighter objects. Like you'll look at the moon and it would be like, you'll see an orange, it almost looks like an atmosphere around it, and that's just the, and once again, that word escapes me for some reason.
Chromatic aberration.
There you go, yep. The aberration of the telescope. So, and it would be really pronounced on, we found it on cheaper ones. Now, that's just saying it's, we're not saying it's a bad telescope, but that will happen on cheaper forms of it because they do use different optics, of course, for, different sales points that they want. There's no need to worry about chromatic aberration on a beginner telescope.
Right.
They do take it into account, but it's not their primary thing. Their thing is to do it as cheap as they can and get it out so people can actually use it. But if you go to the higher end telescopes, the ones that cost $3,000-$4,000, it's not very noticeable.
Well, actually,
on what you do with it.
That's right. Those are telescopes that actually make sure that all the red, green, and blue light are focused to the same point.
Yep.
Okay. So if that's if that's what you're looking for, then basically you want to make sure you get a higher quality instrument, because you won't. And you're right. Like just the other day when we were looking at the craters on the moon, just here in your stream, the edges of the craters that were sharply delineated with a bright like white, bright white edge. Mm-hmm. You could see they had a little bit of a red edge on one side and a little bit of a blue edge on the other. So there was some chromatic aberration, even in these higher-end telescopes.
Yeah, especially the more you go in.
Yeah, yeah. And what happens is, if you have a telescope that is what's called achromatic, all right, ACHROMATIC, so chromatic with an A in front of it, achromatic, then there are conditions or mechanisms within the telescope, mostly lens structure, that corrects for that chromatic aberration we're talking about, where the different rays focus at different places. The red, the green, and the blue are all focused to the same point, roughly. That's an achromatic telescope. And that's something that, you would definitely want.
Yep. And now, you ready for this next topic?
Yeah.
Let's talk about moon bases, shall we?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because here's the thing. We did have some people looking, saying moon bases obviously didn't know about complex craters and whatnot. But I see an ever-growing genre here on YouTube of people taking moon imaging, even through their own, telescopes and whatnot, and totally blasting the crap out of it with contrast and adding colors and, saying that, look at this moon base. It's obviously so overblown and blown out that the image itself is creating stuff.
Yeah.
Have you seen this phenomena?
I've seen people. When I've done shows where they actually, what they provided me with was actually pre-tinted locations on a photo that outlined something they purported was there, and then they try to say, "Well, look, it's right there in front of you. You can see it." And I said, "It's tinted, so I will see it no matter what I look for."
Right.
You can't have that. You've got to have just a basic photo.
But when you so people
yes,
say,
I've
well,
seen
this, the moon has color. Yes, the moon does have color. We're not saying the moon doesn't have color. We tend towards the more black and white, and because of the fact that, because if you start adding colors that aren't in the natural image, or totally blasting the contrast out of it, you're going to create images, and then all of a sudden, Pareidolia takes over, Pareidolia, however you want to say it, and you start seeing stuff, and it's very easy to do.
That's right. That's right, because in the real world, okay, the moon actually has several gradations of brown color. Naturally, there's gradations of gray, but you know what? Moon regolith, the lunar regolith on the moon is not just plain old gray, and that's why, like with our 3D printed craters, I actually add some warmer colors.
Well, you know what, Mark? I just did this on the stream, and you'll see it popping up here very shortly. But I'm looking at the screen right now, and I can pick about 6 moon bases out with what I just did with this image. And that means I totally blew it out, over contrasted, added saturation of colors that weren't there, and we can just pick out the bases and call them whatever we want. This is not the way to do imaging by any means. Just so
I see what you're doing. Yeah, I see. Yeah. Actually,
well, I know know what I'm doing.
What you're doing is actually highlighting the chromatic aberration, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, and the other thing is, here's a little trick that I don't know if some of you know this already, of course. But if you actually were to take a photograph that looks like, when you're looking at the lunar surface, it looks like craters are actually raised domes, all you have to do is turn it upside down. Rotate it 180 degrees, or tilt your head.
Well, most of the time it's your eyes.
Well, yeah, it's actually your brain, okay? It's your brain translating what it sees. And so what you do is just turn it upside down. And then you'll say, whoa, that looks incredible. Now I actually see it as the proper pits that it is. And that's something that, I used. I actually did that for one television show. I told them, in fact, I rotated an image around the other way because they said it was a dome. This is a dome. It's a city on the moon. And it looks just like a dome. I rotated it upside down, and you couldn't see a dome if you tried. It looked like a crater, like the crater that it was. And I said, look, you can see the crater right now. It's a crater.
Well, I
can't even tell you which one.
I was watching this one channel that was just, the guy, I don't know if he had like a projector screen or something. I'm not sure what he was doing. It was like, what was the name? It was like Bob Sees Things or something like that. And who was trying to get all scientific with it. And, and I'm looking at this going, what the hell am I looking at? And that's exactly what it was. If you just saw the image earlier, what I did, it's just a totally blown out imaging of the moon. And, Pareidolia is bad enough when you're, looking at it now, in normal light. You can see all kinds of things. I mean, look at the people that don't know anything about complex craters come in and go, oh, there's a base in that crater. There's a base in that crater.
That's right. And depending on where the sun is, you can think that complex crater's central peak, which of course are very complex peaks, can take on any shape that your brain can muster. Now, remember, for those that many of you know what pareidolia is, and Keith is saying it liberally, but I'll just define it. When you look at a pareidolia event is when you look at something and you try to make sense of a pattern of randomness. You try to put it in terms of something that you understand. So your brain tries to translate it to something you can understand. So, for instance,
something familiar.
You look at that's right. You look at the like a strange set of shapes on a bark of a tree, and you see a puppy dog. Oh, look, there's a dog in the bark. Okay, or look, there's a bunny in the clouds.
The clouds are a big one.
Right, the clouds are always a big one, and your brain is doing that for you. It's actually a miraculous organ, because it's actually going back through all of, in your history. It's going through all your education, and it's finding a familiar pattern in the unfamiliar. And that's all pareidolia is. And trust me, in the UFO arena, where I try to do extraterrestrial investigation, let me tell you, pareidolia is a big one.
In the pareidolia world, on screen, and you guys will see it on YouTube, what I'm circling with my mouse is now a spaceship. And this is what we're talking about, where people seeing things. All right, and Mark, you'll see it there on YouTube in a second too. But yeah, I agree. Continue. I just wanted to make that point, because since Paul was zooming in right at the right time.
Yeah, right. I see that he is. Yeah, I mean, I can see a face there. I can see a face in that crater. It looks like it's smiling at me. Oh wait, now it's frowning. I mean, anything you think you see, you can make happen too, because your brain will fabricate the rest of the shape. I'll give you a perfect example, and this is controversial: the face on Mars. When we look at the face on Mars, okay, you look at the fact that when you looked at the imagery from the Viking orbiter before that's when it first came to light, you saw that Cydonia face, but what you didn't see was the other side of the face. You just saw half a face. Your brain filled in the rest and said, well, that's the other eyes over there, and the cheekbone is there, and that's got to be the rest of the forehead. Your brain built the pattern, and then your mind said, by golly, that's a face. Yep. And that's how a myth is born. So
what do you say about the monolith on Mars' moon?
On Phobos, well, Phobos has this strange monolith. It looks like it's sticking up, but it is sticking up. But the fact is, Phobos has a fairly low gravity, obviously. So any ejecta that is blasted off of Mars or blasted off of Phobos itself is not going to come back down and roar down into Phobos and just like bury itself. Perhaps it might just end up staying up pretty high, and then depending on the sun angle, the quote unquote monolith can look like a towering pinnacle, like the Washington Monument. Okay, because
true,
the
but
shadow.
Can we just admit it's weird? It's in a really weird spot in the middle of, like, it looks like a plain of Nebraska.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but don't forget, we're not. We don't actually have full detailed maps of Phobos yet. Correct. Only the most coarse details are the things we can see.
Damn, Paul.
I know, huh?
Jeez, he's going in there, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Don't go too far. I got to come back, man.
Oh no, he's getting. Wait, it's gonna get a lot closer than that. Holy moly, he ain't joking around tonight.
Yeah.
Good job, brother. Wow.
Yeah, take a look at that now. Look at the colors in there, though. You can see some brown, some gray, and I don't know how realistic the browns are. I mean, it looks a little. Well,
if I go totally B&W,
yeah,
it's not much different.
Well, if you go totally B&W, you can see that there's like a, it looks a little bit. It's a darker gray, but that's just so cool.
The man is a master.
He is. and he's.
I'm doing very little on this end when it comes to imaging that.
Yeah, what you don't see is that he's also sitting there and rubbing his hands in hideous glee and going, look at all my telescopes.
He's probably freezing down there in that 60-degree weather.
60 degrees, my gosh.
All right, you got to be warm-blooded for Miami.
I can send him some 37-degree weather if he'd like.
Yeah, but man, what a beautiful shot. And it seems like the air calmed a little bit too. Seems to be settling a little bit.
Yeah, the other night when I looked at the moon the other night, and for the life of me, I could not see any rippling at all. It was so. In fact, everybody noticed when we were talking. They noticed that it was extremely, extremely still. It was really nice. And I just looked at the moon because, I couldn't get over how great it looked. And then I saw that, there were different colors visible. We looked at Messier, which has that wonderful ray system sticking out on the side there. And it looked beautiful. You could see it so easily. Everything was so beautiful.
Dude, I get so many emails every week about people going, "Hey, I got a 9.25 Celestron, and I got all these lenses and stuff for it." And they're like, "Why? How come my images don't look like yours?" And then guys message me with 11-inch scopes and 12-inch scopes. "Oh, we can't get it to look like how you guys do it." And I keep trying to tell them, guys, it's not, it's the camera.
Yeah.
Paul has these things custom built with prime optics chips, that allows him to do this. And, they're not cheap by any means. So, I mean, a telescope can only take you so far.
Nah.
But we can line up two people. We can line up Paul with a 10-inch scope and somebody else with a 10-inch scope, and you will see the difference majorly just by the camera.
Oh, yeah.
When they both say broadcast it at the same. You're not going to get this with, what do you call the main star shoot or whatever it is?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not going to get it with a star shoot camera.
I mean, a star shoot camera is actually a good camera to use as a guider.
Yeah, and it's good for deep space stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's good as a guider. Okay, for doing longer exposure stuff. And Sky True Livestream will add one. We're going to add a star shoot system. In fact, an auto guiding system to the whole mix as a next thing after we automate the dome.
But I should add, once again, for all the people that are messaging me, I'm not going to tell you where the camera's from, because basically that's what gives us our edge. Pretty much over every other moon stream is that camera, which is why we protect what it is. And once again, it's custom made, so I don't even know the guy's name. I know the guy lives in Canada that makes it. That's the only thing I know about it. Paul's the one that contacted
Oh, I know
him.
who that is. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. It could be any amount of people. So just so you know, if you email the channel trying to figure out what camera it is, even if I knew, I wouldn't be able to tell you, because that is held close to the vest. So, and I say it's worth it.
Yeah.
If he's going to keep one thing, I'd say that definitely should be it.
Well, look, there's no doubt. I mean, cameras are not cheap. I mean, I paid almost $3,000 for the camera that runs Sky True Livestream.
Yeah.
And it shows. I mean, you see very good quality. Now, my camera is actually, I took a stock camera that comes a certain way, and I actually modified my camera.
Right.
So it's not just a regular straight old camera out of the box. I've made changes to that camera to allow me to get better views than typical.
Yeah.
So
and one thing I should also add
again,
in
the edge.
A lot of people get baffled that we don't use lenses or filters. We don't use a moon filter like a lot of people have to. We don't use any Barlows.
Yeah.
This is literally barrel cam to telescope.
Yep. That's what I do.
So it's
yeah.
I mean, it's not a DSLR. It's not a point and shoot. It's not a it's not a star shoot camera type. With the ones that you get with the optics chip and you stick it in your telescope. It's nothing like that. So, but just remember, the optics chip is the main thing.
Yeah.
Just remember that.
you need to have the resolution.
Mm-hmm. And just to wait until he's able to get good internet down there. Jeez Louise, it's really going to get interesting then.
Yeah.
When he can actually upload in full, oh, it's going to be
high res.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It'll get rid of all these lines. And if you ever notice, like especially with this bigger scope, when he moves this around, because of that optics chip, it almost looks like the mountainous areas move at a different rate than what the lower lying areas do. You can sometimes see it when he moves the camera. It looks like they're almost moving at two separate times, which gives it a really weird effect.
That's just the dome. That's just the sky dome that the moon is projected on.
Yeah.
It's an interference pattern with the sky dome from the flat Earth.
It's the big projector projecting the moon.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another moon base. Found one.
Yeah, I see it there on the lower left there.
Yep.
Actually, right in the center. There's a nice dome in the middle, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because they always put moon bases in the center of a crater on a dome. Yeah.
And let me make this point very clear. I would love to find a moon base I would love it. Definitive proof. I would love to find moon. I would love to see something cruising along near the moon surface. You know, I would love to see little lights shooting out of a crater. I'm talking about like real lights, not like secure team lights that are different frame rates than the actual video.
Yeah, right.
You know, that would be our Graceland. Because the first thing I would do, because you know me, the first thing I would do is call you up and say, dude, look at this. You know, and if you can't come up with an explanation for it, then I think we've got something.
Well, I'm not trying to always explain away stuff, but I do know of a whole lot of natural phenomena that can cause many of the things we see, and it's not necessarily true that that's what's causing them. It's just that, is it the most likely item that at that moment? Maybe not. You know, it depends. You know,
right?
This is beautiful right here. Look at that.
Yeah, its crater walls are just amazing, and you can actually see some tracking actually inside the crater.
Yeah.
Wow. This whole area up here is just gorgeous.
Yeah. You can see some nice rippling, and you can see some terracing there.
Yep.
Paul, don't get too close. I don't want to hit it.
And then once again, you got this little wayward light here in the middle that, you know, on any other channel would be considered a pyramid floating in midair.
Right. Exactly so, when in fact it's just a partially illuminated central peak.
Right, but look at the detail in the inner rim. And then, of course, you got the crater apron around here with all that kind of detail. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
It's insane.
That's gorgeous. And by the way, if people want to go to the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter quick map that we've talked about before and that I did a SkyTour live stream on and told you how to use it, taught you how, you can actually draw a line across the bottom of that crater and see what the topography looks like. See what's raising, what's lowering. I think you'll be surprised to find that it's not just one flat level. Okay, and that area outside the crater, it looks like it's a flat Maria out there. Guess what? It's anything but flat. When you draw a line across and get a profile, you say, wow, it changed by over 1,500 feet.
Yeah.
You know? And it's very interesting how the moon actually works. It's a lot of terrain that the mechanics of that terrain is hidden from you from views like this. You just don't see it the way it really is. And I think that's part of the reason why people think that all these strange conspiracies about the moon, because it just doesn't seem like it's possible.
Yeah, but that's with everything, you know. I mean, once again, it's things that people don't understand breeds conspiracy. You know, and the fact that we have only went there a handful of times, and you know, it's just bound to produce conspiracies about why we haven't went back, or if we ever went there to begin with. Which, of course, yes, it has been proven we've been there. Don't worry, any of the moon landing debunked stuff that you think you have can actually be debunked itself. So
yeah, I mean, the other thing too is that when you look at the moon, you know, you say, wow, do we have any good photos of that crater?
Did YouTube just play a commercial again? That's the second time they did that tonight. I got a little pop-up in my window. It said, ad base, 30 second. Okay. I guess they don't like people streaming a long time without them getting something out of it. Because usually I don't put ads on these until the following day.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
Well, you don't put them on at all. It just happens by itself.
No, I actually put them on.
You do?
Yeah. Yeah, this channel's monetized. But no, you know what? I usually do it a couple days after.
Yeah.
Yeah. And usually it's only like 1 per hour or something like that if we go for like 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I don't put them like in midstream, but I'm getting a little pop-up that's saying, I guess YouTube started to. Oh yeah, I just seen people in the chat saying they got a commercial. Okay, I hope it was a good one anyway.
I never got it.
Yeah, some people did, some people didn't.
It's weird.
Oh well. Small price to pay, I guess. I didn't see it on my end anyway. And I got the stream up. So
really strange.
Oh well. I can't really complain about it either, because you know YouTube really took into account, you know, stuff we were telling them about live stream chats and everything, and they actually did something about it. And if you noticed, the troll armies that used to come in are basically nowhere to be found anymore because they realize their content can't even get on to the chat anymore.
Ah, there we go.
You know, so it's not like it's going to be seen and somebody has to delete it. It never makes it to the chat before a moderator has to either approve or deny it. So, yeah,
that's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's not too bad. They do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll continue to make it better.
Wow, that's cool.
That's
Very
a
cool. I
shot.
like it.
I love these wide. We were talking about getting one that we can actually do the full moon, like, because this is the furthest out it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's like, pull it out so we can see the entire moon. It's like, we can't. It's just the way the scopes are. Well, with the way the camera runs with the scope, we can't pull it out any further.
Yeah, no, well, that's the thing. It is what it is.
How's the weather where you are tonight?
It's cold and clear.
No, so
I was outside actually. Tonight was a calibration night for the telescope, so I didn't stream. But I went outside and I did a precision alignment of the telescope again. What happens is over time, as the telescope gets cooler as the weather changes, it's on a large steel post basically to a concrete pillar buried deep in the ground, and the telescope, several hundred pounds, is sitting on this concrete and on this steel post. And as you move the telescope around a lot, things shift. The level might change a little bit, and so you have to change. You have to follow it. You have to make sure that you've got that telescope perfectly level. Number one. Number two. Every time you re-level a telescope, you've screwed up the alignment. That is, how accurate it'll point at specific objects you want to see in the sky. So you have to go do that again. Mm-hmm. So tonight was a precision alignment night. I actually spent about an hour and a half working continuously to actually get the telescope to be able to point at anything I wanted to see. And what you do is when you go look at something that's in the western sky, low in the sky, then you want to look at something maybe along the celestial equator that's toward the east side. Then you want to go look at something that's north, kind of closer to the North Pole. And then you want to try and do a couple of other points that's sort of in between all the others. Right. If you can see an object the same, if you see all the objects you're going to if you see all of those in the telescope that night, with that sitting, then you've got your alignment well done. And I could see everything. When I first started the night, when I tested it out, I told it to go to a very big globular cluster, and it wasn't even in the field. It was down below, out of the field. Like, wow, okay, time to do a realignment. So I did the alignment night, and now it's set, ready to go again, probably for another 3 or 4 months.
Nice. And are you planning on doing any streams this week? Do you have any nights set aside if it's clear?
Yeah. I mean, tonight's I'd stream tonight if I didn't have to do the alignment night, but I did the alignment. So any other night that's clear, I'll probably stream. And as you know, Amanda Curran always helps me on my stream. She's wonderful.
Absolutely. And once again, I should mention that, myself and Paul and Mark and Bill, New York Skywatcher, we do have this little thing called Astro Imaging Live.
That's right.
Where if we are streaming on the same nights, all of us or a couple of us, you can actually go to astroimaginglive.com and actually see all 3 streams right there at the same time. And you can pick which audio you want to listen to, because usually we all have different audio going. Bill does a lot for KGRA, so he does play KGRA a lot, or sometimes he just does Skype stuff. Mark and Amanda are educating people over there at the Sky Tour live stream, of course. And then here you got some funky YouTube playlist, and every once in a while somebody comes on and chit chats with me. So yeah, you can pick out whatever you want.
Yeah, so and it's great.
And Kenneth asked about photos, and yes, Kenneth, if you want to see some awesome astrophotography that Mark does actually during his stream and then takes them the next day and does some stacking with them or whatever he thinks he needs to do to them, And he does post them on Facebook, the Sky Tour live stream Facebook group. You can see it there. And he has a very awesome one of Andromeda, which just blew my mind. Gorgeous.
Well, you know, that photo of Andromeda was wonderful because I actually use a special filter to try and enhance the look of these. But let me just tell you what a real astrophoto is. A real astrophoto is not just taking a picture and saying, wow, look, I got a beautiful picture. Because the photo you take is subject to whatever the conditions were for that moment you took the photo. If the photo was, say, 30 seconds long. If the wind was a little bit strong in that area of sky for 30 seconds or for 10 seconds, then the image is going to be a little bit blurry. Right. So what you do is you take, if you just take for instance, if you take a series of 30-second photos of the same thing, say 20 of them, then you can do something called stacking, where you actually pile them together, basically, and get a better image, because faint objects are brighter when you stack a bunch of faint objects together, and you see the faint objects looking brighter. Then there are techniques for reducing the background brightness, which also increases at the same time, and that's really cool. And so, the other benefit you have is if you take 20 images of the same thing, you can go through all images and see if any one of those images or several of the images have little tails on them or a little bit out of focus or moved a little bit during the exposure, and you just delete them. You just get rid of them. Right. So say you're left with 14. You take those 14 and stack them, and now it's 14 perfect shots that you stack together to make one beautiful shot. And then you work on that for a while.
Gorgeous photos, I should add. And once again, it's 10:55 right now, and I believe Paul wants to wrap at 11. So we'll start wrapping it up here. Let me see if there's any more questions in the chat for you anyway. Kenneth wants to know, do you use the Hubble palette?
Yeah, actually I wrote a little program to convert my photos to a Hubble palette. And I did it within Photoshop. Photoshop has a little tiny macro language that you can do and create stuff. So I actually started playing with it, and I wrote a bunch of little tools, if you call them that will do some things that might take, say, 5 minutes to go through and do to your photos, and I can do them with a click, and they're done in about 3 seconds, if that. And that's nice stuff. And yeah, I use the Hubble palette. I actually created the Hubble palette. Why the Hubble palette anyway? The Hubble palette, it's looking at the silicon line, it's looking at the hydrogen alpha line, and it's looking at the oxygen 3 line. Okay, oxygen 3 is doubly ionized oxygen, and silicon 2 is singly ionized silicon, and then the hydrogen alpha basically is the hydrogen, the H2 basically. And so when you look at which is singly ionized hydrogen, so those three filters separately would make up a real astrophoto, and that's what I was talking about. With what do you take to take a real astrophoto? What would you do? You would take a bunch of exposures in those three different filter types. Then you could combine them, and then in Photoshop, especially, you could take each of these images and create a final Hubble palette image. And the benefit of doing that is that the hydrogen alpha is put in a different color than the silicon, which is also red, right? And can get confused with hydrogen alpha. And that's very different from the oxygen 3, okay, which is sort of a bluish green. So when you take and put them in a different color palette, it actually accentuates the hydrogen alpha, and it's very, very cool. And it's more instructive, actually. And scientists use it a lot to actually be able to look at what's going on deep in a nebula, where they might not have been able to see it.
Yeah, sorry, I was just checking out. Something flew by at 10:57:15. I wanted to make sure to get that timestamp done. Looked a little weird, if you know what I mean. So you can check that out and tell me what it was then.
It is Miami.
It is Miami, as usual. And I believe that's where we're going to wrap it up, guys. Mark, thanks again for coming on and joining me.
Had a fun time.
I'll let the stream play till 11. with the music and whatnot, and then we'll wrap it up from there. But thanks for listening to me and Mark gabber on like we always do. I hope you learned a thing or two. We got some recommendations, and we'll talk to you guys hopefully tomorrow night.
And one thing too, just for everybody listening, if you have your own favorite crater and you'd like to see it in a real 3D print, then you can contact Keith or myself or Bill New York Skywatcher or FX Models Planetary Replica Division, and we will make that for you. We can print out almost any crater on the moon now, and we have Mars, we have Pluto, we have
awesome,
and they're beautiful. I just did Herschel crater the other night, and it came out so pretty. And the nice thing is, you can hold it up to the light with the proper east-west orientation and see the progression of how the shadows look on the crater throughout the course of the month of the moon. And it's really, really important to actually see how pareidolia works, because even on your printed crater, you can see the things you think are, a face or whatever. They show up, and it's like, oh, check that out. That's so funny.
Yep. And we'll get more centralized in the coming weeks of where you can actually go and easily get one of these things. No problem whatsoever. And we'll figure all that stuff out for you. But they are available, so just message somebody. We'll be sure to get you some. Yeah,
and we got Mars, too. And I just I did Olympus Mons today and Gusev Crater, which was, the site of one of our Mars rovers. So, really cool. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Hope you're doing great.
Yeah, and once again, hopefully we'll see everybody tomorrow night, and make sure you check out Sky Tour live stream with Mark D'Antonio, and go over and subscribe to that channel to learn a thing or two, because I know I do.
Or just hang out and enjoy the sights.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, man.
Great stuff over there. So once again, we'll see you tomorrow night, guys, and we are out. Have fun.